James Donnelly, founder of Safe Haven Insurance, your Medicare and health insurance safe place. Welcome to another episode of Medicare Talk. Originally, it was supposed to be a podcast about Medicare and all that goes with it. It's kind of morphed into something else. It's more of a resource for seniors. And I speak with guests every week, and I try to bring value to my community, my listeners. Today, I'm honored. I'm with Ellen Smiley. She is a financial literacy coach. And I met Ellen, I would say almost a year ago. And she's definitely touched my soul. I am very passionate about financial literacy. And if any of you have, gone to my About Me on my website, you know that I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And at a very young age, I had to go to work. My father used to bring me to his deli when I was 10 years old. We used to open up the deli. I would go to school right from work. So I would go with my dad at 4 a.m. and my grandfather would drive me to work, drive me to school. And I was making good money. I was 10, 11, 12 years old. And then as I became a teenager, I was making boatloads of money, what seemed like boatloads of money. And I didn't know how to save. No one taught me how to save. They taught me how to work and earn. And that's a big part of who I am. And that's why I love what you do, Ellen, because you bring light to everybody that makes money and spends money, really. So it's super duper important to hear what you do and how you help people. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
Thanks so much, James. I appreciate this. Nice to see you again.
So what is a financial literacy coach?
So take it back to the first step, financial literacy,
Okay.
Which is essentially how you handle your everyday money concerns. And I don't come from a background of financial people. I mean, we had our own family finances, but there's no bankers, there's no insurance people, there's no investment people. So I didn't have anybody to teach me the lessons. And like you, I knew how to work, I knew how to earn money. Allocating money to the right areas and figuring out how this was all going to get pieced together was totally new. I got a job with Long Island's second largest credit union. And my second day on the job, my manager came to me and said, "Great, you're the new financial literacy person." I went, "What? Say what?" Never heard the term before. So this was back in 2007. And it was a very steep and a very quick learning curve. And the more I learned about it, the more fascinated I became, because everything just seemed to make so much sense. How you handle your everyday finances has such an impact on every piece of your life. When you know how to work, how to earn, but not know how to allocate the money properly, you get into debt. It's so easy now. You pull out that piece of plastic. You want shoes, buy shoes. You want food, buy food. You want a refrigerator. You want a car. You want almost anything you want.
Now that piece of plastic is not a credit card. Most of our plastic is linked to a bank account. So we don't even see it. And not many people balance checkbooks anymore or balance their accounts. So it's just like,
Correct.
They think it's just endless, and it's not.
It's not.
It's linked to Amazon, Netflix. You could
Correct.
go on Amazon and shop, and it just comes right out of your checking account, and you don't even realize what you're spending.
I would say it's probably 50-50 between credit cards and debit cards. So the debit card is what's linked to your bank account. That's your money that you're spending. So essentially, it costs you nothing to spend your own money. When you use a credit card, it's costing you money to spend that money, because that comes with an interest charge. So you're paying money on top of what you've already paid for whatever the product is. So what I do is work with people in an intense way, a detailed way, money in, money out, but also where is the money out going to? And that's the critical piece. If you go to an investment person, you're somewhere in your mid-20s, your late 20s, you want to start setting up some kind of an investment portfolio, maybe set up an IRA or a 401k, you go to an investment advisor, which I'm not, and they tell you, okay, This is what we can do. They talk about stocks, they talk about bonds, they talk about mutual funds, they talk about whatever it is that they're talking about. What they don't talk about is how you get to the position of where you have the money to put into all of those various pieces.
Great.
That's where I come into play. So the detailed work that I do with people starts with probably one of the most boring things in the world, a budget, because that's how you find out what you got and where it's going to.
Budgets are so important. And every successful business, every Fortune 500 company around has a budget. They know what's projected to come in and what every cent is going out before they actually spend it. And then the reserve they could use for growth, for additional investments.
Correct.
So a budget is so important. And as a business owner, I work off of a budget every day. And a funny thing is, Ellen actually, she speaks at schools and libraries and corporations. People invite her in to speak with their employees, their students, etc. So Ellen invited me to sit in on one of her lectures at Farmingdale High School. And she was teaching a group of middle-aged people, more or less, about finance and budget. I think there was one young person there. She touched on the budget and the importance of it and how she worked with somebody, and you could get into that story later, and she realized that they were spending money on takeout, and then they were spending money on food shopping as well, and then half the food was going in the garbage. So I started thinking about this budget. I said, wow, I do corporate budgets all the time for my company. When was the last time I sat down and did a personal budget? So I took her advice. I went through my debit card statement, my bank statement for my debit cards, for my credit cards. And I picked up on $675 in subscriptions that I didn't even realize that I was paying for. I was like, oh my goodness, why is my Hulu $189? I would have kept cable for that. And I realized that for the Super Bowl, we got live TV and whatever. So I'm saving now $650 a month just based on a little tidbit of just going through where my money was going out. So that was awesome. Thank you so much, Ellen.
You are so welcome.
So you start with budgets, which makes complete sense.
I start with budgets, and what I tell the people that I work with, whether it's in a classroom or an individual one-on-one setting, is as we go through the numbers, if you find that you run out of money before you run out of month, you got some work to do. If you find that you run out of month before you run out of money, you still got work to do because we can find more money. And that's the money that goes into your investments. That's the money that goes into your emergency fund. So if the refrigerator breaks down, if you have a leak in the roof, if something happens to the car, you don't have to pull out a credit card because you don't use your debit card for that because it's going to take out too big a chunk from your checking account. And as soon as you pull out that credit card, it starts costing you money because you're now paying interest on whatever it is that you've charged. A credit card is a type of loan, and there's always interest attached to a loan. So I work through this process. Once we get through the budget, which is actually the most painful part of the process, we get into the second piece.
Which could sting. That budget could really, like it stung me.
Absolutely.
And when I sat through your class, it stung. I was like, wow. And when I caught it, I was like, am I a moron? Like, is something wrong with me? How did I not pick up on this?
But it's so typical. It's how many times do we take a free subscription, free for 3 months, free for 6 months, and the fine print says after the introductory period, it'll then be whatever it is a month charge. We forget about that piece. We watched, we saw whatever it was that the subscription was for, and then we kind of forgot about it. You know, they don't send out a reminder that your subscription, your free trial is finished. No, they just start charging you. So once we get to that point, once we get over the budget and we get into the next piece, is the fun part. That's where the treasure hunt begins. And the treasure is finding hidden money in what your current situation is.
$650.
You found $650. And it's not uncommon for that to happen. And there's lots of ways to go about doing it. If you can find $10 a day, just $10 a day that you can save.
$3,650 a year.
There you go. And that's the money that you use to pay down the debt that you're living in. So I say that I am 50% of someone's health life. which sounds pretty egotistical and somewhat outlandish. But this is the way it goes. When you're living in debt and you're living paycheck to paycheck and the bills are coming in, whether it's through an email or whether it's through a paper statement coming in the mail, the stress level is there. You're not sleeping well at night, depending on the amount of debt. Maybe you're looking at getting a part-time second job. Maybe your wife or your husband who wanted to stay home with the kids when they were young, you can't afford to do that now because you got to have the money to pay those bills. It's affecting your family life. It's affecting your social life. It's affecting your community life. It's affecting every aspect of your life. So me teaching you how to get that stress out of your life is now 50% of your healthy life. The other 50% is made up of your family, your friends, your church, your temple, your community, your medical team. That's the other 50%, and they will all be positively affected when you get out of the debt that you're living in without that stress. 250 years ago, Benjamin Franklin said, when you run in debt, you give another power over your liberty. 250 years later, those words are still true.
Not only are they accurate and true, but how many people can't do things that they want to do because they're not financially able?
Correct.
How many people continue to make poor decisions because of the situation that they're in? How many people say, I don't have the cash reserve to go on vacation with my kids, but I could swipe my card. Or I need a new refrigerator. Oh, Lowe's, Home Depot, Best Buy, I'll get a Best Buy credit card. So now it's snowballing.
Correct.
It's snowballing. It was, I guess 2007, I think I read a book. Tony Robbins, it was Money, Master of the Game. And it really resonated with me because for years, my dad had friends and they would say to me, just put $25 a week away. Just put $50. Since I'm a kid, they said, just put $25 a week away. Just put $50 a week away. And it wasn't until I realized, like, I'm missing out on opportunities. There's so many opportunities that I'm missing. A discounted real estate that I could have bought if I only had the extra money to put down as a down payment. A stock went down and I knew it was going to go back up and I didn't have the cash reserve to buy that stock. So it wasn't until it really resonated with me when I read this book and I was like, holy crap, I am a consumer. I'm not an investor. I work to consume. I don't work to invest. And that was pretty scary to me. And I said, wow, I'm a business owner. I've worked my whole life. And what do I have to show for it? I wasn't in debt, but I didn't have a cash reserve. I was living month to month to month. And when opportunities arose, the only thing that I had to invest or spend was my monthly revenue. And it wasn't me going out to dinner 10 times for the month. It was me using that money to put in something else. So it kind of really opened my eyes. And then he spoke about investors invest on downsides. So when the market's down, everybody who's cash strapped is pulling their money out because they don't want to lose it, because they don't want to lose any additional money, while investors are really are being opportunistic, and they're investing truly in an opportunity of a lifetime. You know, so COVID was an eye opener for me. Airline stocks were down, anything travel, airlines, cruise ships, anything was down, and I was like, wow. And my daughter's like, Dad, what should I invest in? I said, anything that's down. And then when oil was all the way down and they couldn't get rid of oil, I said, buy anything oil. We did. And then obviously on the upside, we were like, wow, you know, holy crap. So that really opened my eyes. So I could totally see what you're saying, that rainy day fund, that budgeting, that it totally makes sense. And Benjamin Franklin's quote was spot on 250 years ago.
It was right there then, and it's right there. It's right here now. So one of the things that I teach, even with people who are in significant debt, is I want you to make a promise to me. I want you to take $1 a week. Go to your bank, whatever bank it is that you use.
Just $1.
Just $1 a week.
Okay.
Open up a new account, a savings account, and deposit $1 a week into that bank account. That's all.
Okay.
And people will look at me and say, seriously, $1 a week, what is that going to do? And the answer is $1 a week is not going to do anything. Even at the end of the year, you've got $52.
Exactly.
It's not going to do a lot for you. But what it does do is get you into the habit of putting money into that account. So when you're in the position, and work with me, you can be in that position. Mm-hmm. When you're in the position where you've got more than $1 to put into that account, you're going to start putting money into that account. That's going to be your emergency fund. You get a great tip on a stock. You want to go on vacation with the family. You want to go out to the movies and dinner. Whatever it is that you want to do, you've got the money to do it. So start with your $1 a week. Teach your kids, get them a piggy bank. Teach your kids and put a quarter into that piggy bank out of whatever their allowance is.
I'm laughing because I had like a little dispute with my wife yesterday. It was my daughter's class trip and we went to the Bronx Zoo.
Oh, nice. In the rain.
In the rain. And then all the kids were buying these stuffed animals and I'm like, honey, we have so many stuffed animals already. We throw them out. Like, we take them and throw them in the trash so that the kids don't know, because otherwise they would have 200 stuffed animals.
Right.
At one point, the kids' beds were covered with stuffed animals. I was like, no. So I would just take 2 weeks, and they never even noticed.
Sure.
I said, why are we buying another stuffed animal? She's like, let her have a stuffed animal. So she bought her stuffed animal, $26.50 for a bear that hangs around your neck. All right, it's a little bear. It was cute, but for $26.50, I was boiling. I didn't say anything. Oh my God, it's a stuffed animal. We go through the day. She's like, Mom, everybody's buying a stuffed snake. She says, James, she never asked for anything. And I said, she never asked for anything. I said, we just paid $24 for parking, $100 to get in, to go on a class trip, plus what it cost us to send her. I said, no, I'm not doing it. She has one stuffed animal, that's it. Needless to say, my wife buys her the snake. Okay. So now in my mind, I'm at $53 in my brain that we just spent on stuffed animals, which I know we're going to throw in the garbage anyway. So I'm boiling, right? I am boiling. My wife's like, James, get a grip. Stop. You're embarrassing me. I'm like, let these other parents listen to me. Like, I was so upset. Ellen, I'm like, let them listen. I'm like, Melina, if you worked minimum wage, right?
Yeah.
$16 an hour, you would have to work almost 4 hours to pay for those two stuffed animals. Think about that. And Jamie says to me, she says, you're crazy. She said, the other parents are listening to you. And I'm like, maybe they should take my advice too. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
But that's so true.
No.
You're trading your time for money. So how are you going to spend the money? Because that's how you're spending your time.
When I go out, I mean, if I eat a great meal, like, here, for instance, we're actually at Bongo's. Sorry, we should have done this earlier. We're at Bongo's Burrito in Seaford. It's an amazing restaurant. Food is amazing. Greg, kindly let us set up in here and shoot our podcast. Places in Seaford on Merrick Road, it's amazing. So back to the meal, if I go to a place like Bongo's and I know the food's going to be amazing, I don't mind spending the $100 to go out. I really don't. It's when last night the kid's like, oh, you promised me PDQ. I go through the drive-thru, I get my two daughters, right, that are with me for dinner, right? It was $52. For drive-through for an 8 and a 10-year-old. And in my mind, I'm like, $53 on stuffed animals, $54 on freaking fast food. I lost my mind. My wife's like, you're in rare form? I'm like, I'm not in rare form. We just spent $106, I said, on garbage. I was so upset. So yes, I feel the pain, but you have to be cognitive of your behaviors.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I don't do the work for my clients. Mm-hmm. I work with them. So when they're finished with me, they have all the tools they need to not fall into the same hole again. When we go through the budget, when we go through paying down and eliminating the debt, one of the first steps that I have them do is check their credit scores. Mm-hmm. Not unusual to see something in the 580 to 610 range. Wow. Not good. It limits your options in life. By the time we have finished, and depending on the situation, it could be a month's worth of work. It could be sick. I worked with somebody who came out of bankruptcy. It was a prolonged period because it was really convoluted. I have them check their credit scores on a regular basis. And as they're paying down that debt and they're getting their feet back under them again, they can see those credit scores going up. So what does that mean to them? That means their lives are going to become a whole lot easier. For instance, car insurance rates. Part of what
It
determines your
shows
car
how
insurance
responsible
rate.
you are.
Exactly. The higher your credit score, the lower your insurance rate. You're going to buy a car, you're going to buy a house, you're going to rent an apartment, get a new job, whatever it is, they're going to be checking your credit score.
Even when you get life insurance.
Yep. That 3-digit number, your credit score is nothing but a 3-digit number, but that 3-digit number can determine your options in life. The lower it is, the fewer options you have and the more expensive they are. The higher it is, the more options you have and the less it costs you going forward. So as we're working through the process, and I'll use myself as an example, back in the olden days of 2020, before the world changed completely, or as it was changing, I came down with COVID during the first wave. And in those days, for those of us who can remember, there was nothing. You either got over it or you died. There was no treatment. There was nothing available. I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't die. But I was left with a permanent lung condition, which I treat when I need to with Symbicort. So I have a medical plan, a prescription plan. My Symbicort cost me $350 every time I fill the prescription. Then the doctor added a second medicine, CVS, $50 a month for 30 pills. So a 3-month supply cost me $150. And I said, yeah, no, this isn't working for me. So I started doing some research. And this was very recent. This was 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And one of the things I'll say in my classes is, if you recognize the name Mark Cuban, who's ever heard the name Mark Cuban? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
Every hand in the room goes up because everybody's heard of Mark Cuban. So here's a piece of information for anybody who uses a prescription. I'm not talking about if you have strep throat and you go to get antibiotics. But if you use a prescription on a regular basis, here's a tip for you. Go to Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs website. Check to see if your prescription is there, which is what I did. So my Symbicort now costs me $167 when I fill a prescription. And my $150 prescription for 90 days now costs me $13.40, including shipping.
Yeah.
So that's where the hidden money is.
And you have to look, you have to research, you have to look at every expense that you have and say, hey, can I do this better? Can I save money somehow? I get it, and a lot of people say you get what you pay for. As far as medication, it doesn't make a difference. I feel like with clothes, if you buy a higher quality clothes, they last a lot longer. So you have to be careful with that. There is a discretionary thing. Okay, so you work with people as young as how old?
I'm getting ready to start doing work with Boy Scouts.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so as young as possible, really, to comprehend the whole
and it's on their
strategy.
level.
Okay.
I mean, it's literally talking about piggy banks.
Okay. High school students, I know you've worked with high school students.
A lot.
You work with first-time home buyers, college students.
And a whole new demographic has come in, and I was a little bit slow on the uptake with this. As we were coming out of COVID, I was hearing from clients that I was working with about their parents. One or the other of the parents were affected, sometimes fatally, or sometimes to such an extent that their lifestyle has changed dramatically. There's a whole demographic of older people who were in committed lifetime relationships, sometimes marriage, sometimes not. That piece doesn't matter. But if the one who is no longer present was the one who was the money handler in the household.
I just referred you to someone whose husband passed away. They weren't involved in the finances. And I see this all the time. I have a client, her husband passed away, and she said to me, meanwhile, I was working with her for a couple months, and she said, James, I keep on finding all these accounts that I didn't know about, investment accounts or whatever. And she said, I just realized that I lost, it was a significant amount in the stock market. That's when the market was down. I said, you're 87 years old. What are you doing invested in the stock market?
Right.
You need a more secure
Correct.
investment. And then, we ended up speaking about annuities, but whatever. So it's people like that. And how many people that you hear that say, my husband passed away, he paid all the bills, he handled the money, or
I hear-
husbands that passed away and said, hey, I got my check deposited in my account, I never touched the money. There's
I
so
hear
many
it
people like
all
that.
the time. I hear it
Okay.
every day now. There's a whole segment of the population. First of all, there's an embarrassment factor. There's a panic factor. There's a loneliness factor. There's an embarrassment factor, because here they are as senior citizens,
Okay.
and it's like they're starting out at 7 years old. And so many times they're hesitant, certainly they don't want to hand over that big piece of their lives to somebody else, a loving child, a banker, a lawyer, they don't want to lose that piece of their independence, but they don't know how to go about holding on to it. And so this is a whole segment of the population now that I'm working with. And what I will tell every client that I sit down with is, I have 2 requirements to work with you. The first is you accept that this is a non-judgment zone. Whatever happened in the past is over and done with. We can't change that. What we're going to do is move forward to get you into a better position. And the second requirement is that you be honest. Be honest with yourself. It's not my life. I'm working with you to make your life better. So if I ask you a question about a specific something, don't think, I'm embarrassed, I can't tell her the right numbers. Tell me the right numbers so that we can move forward. And I have yet to have somebody say, no, I can't do that, because they want to get out of the problem that they're in.
I can see the sense of embarrassment. I mean, I really can. People are embarrassed about spending. I have a friend that I referred to also in bankruptcy. He doesn't even know where he spent the money. I mean, over a course of 3 years, he went through almost $500,000, and and that was an inheritance. That was that was his income plus credit card debt. I mean, it was crazy, and he's got nothing to show for it. It's not. If he had a Ferrari or something like that, it would be a different story. If he went on a million vacations, that's a different story. So you work with everybody. You could come into a church and speak to the whole congregation.
Absolutely.
You could go into a school and speak with a classroom. You speak with college students. I mean, college students, they used to flutter the campuses. I remember when I was in school, giving out credit cards like they were candy.
Yep.
And I had no idea. And that was the first time I got into trouble, was when I was in college.
Right.
I got a credit card, and I mean, whatever. But so you work with first-time home buyers, okay?
Yep.
People who've lost a loved one and aren't financially literate enough to navigate this.
I work with HR managers who take me on as a benefit, a company benefit to their employees.
Okay.
The happier the employees, the better the
Makes complete sense.
employees.
Now, how would our listeners get in touch with you?
So email would be the best way.
And what is your email?
It's finlitcoach, FINLITCOACH at AOL.com.
Okay.
All one word.
Okay.
I'm in and out of email all day long. And my cell is 516-659-1186.
Okay. Great. Could you just repeat that one more time?
516-659-1186.
So what Ellen does is super, super important because people make decisions based on fear. I really, and if you think about it, and part of my passion with financial literacy and financial comprehension is one that is deep rooted. I knew somebody who was in an abusive relationship, and they didn't leave because they had no financial freedom. But what happened was, it was a repetitious cycle because they had children. So the children were now subject to this abusive relationship, and they all made poor decisions because they weren't financially literate.
Right.
So it's always been a passion of mine, but I always wanted to start like a foundation, like a children's financial literacy program, just to really help children educate themselves and learn, because they don't talk about this stuff in school.
No.
They touch on it a little bit in home ec. I remember my son touched on it for a couple of weeks when he was in high school. My girls did too, but it's so important. So call Ellen into your home, have her sit down with you and your kids and kind of get a plan going, teach them how to save, because let's be honest, if lead by example, really. You could tell your children to save all day long, but if you're not having that household conversation about saving and making like a prize wheel, make it like an award ceremony when your children save, or when, let's be real, you give your children allowances or they work. Why do they even have full access to that money? I mean, people say, oh, 20%, 30%. They're kids. They don't pay bills. They don't pay for food. I mean, 50% they should be saving. At the very least, your children should be saving 50%. Open them up a stash account, okay? Teach them how to invest. Even if it was in just a fund, like an S&P 500 fund, have it automatic. Have them put 50% of their allowance in. They could send out requests. I did this with my daughter. They could send out requests for their birthday. Hey, this is where I'm at. This is for my birthday this year. I don't want clothes. I don't want toys. This is what I want. And she would send out a request on Stash, and people would throw $50 in. And I see it with my niece. I see it with children when I go into people's homes. People just accumulate stuff. And most of it is garbage. So instead of teaching your children how to be consumers, teach them how to be investors. Instead of buying that new Apple Watch, take that $700 and buy Apple stock. I mean, make it a game for your kids. Track their investments, track their savings. Make it a big deal. Have a celebration. I mean, and when it comes to communions or birthdays, even infants, really, come on, how many clothes do infants need? My daughter has a whole wardrobe for my granddaughter, and I'm like, what? I'm like, she's gonna wear this one time. I don't understand. So instead of frivolously spending, save. And that's why I haven't bought my granddaughter. I bought her a book, I think, and one other thing. My wife buys her some stuff, but I bought her a whole life policy. I bought her, I invested in a stock account for her. So and I did the same thing for my niece. Instead of giving goods that they're never going to use, presents that they're never going to use, they're going to use one time, and it's going to get lost in a pile of toys. Take that $25, take that $15, throw it in a stock account, throw it in a savings account, buy a whole life policy. I mean, these are all things that could grow for the future and be a benefit. And then you're also teaching them a lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there used to be an ad, and I can't even tell you what company it was for, of a little girl opening up a package on Christmas, and whatever the toy is, the toy comes out, it sits on the floor, and the little girl is playing inside the box, pulling ribbons and things. The younger kids don't know the difference, really. Yeah. As they get older, if you start the lesson then, as they get older, the habit is ingrained and it becomes a natural process for them. And that's where you want them to be. Okay. And as you said, teach by example, because they're always watching. I
agree. Thank you so much, Ellen, for being on our show. I really value what you do. I think it's so important for you to speak to as many people as you can. And again, what's that phone number again so they can get in touch with you?
516-659-1186.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm James Donnelly. I'm with Safe Haven Insurance, your health insurance and Medicare safe place. I could be reached at 631-608-1137. And I want to thank Greg from Bongo's Burritos in Seaford. This is an amazing restaurant. The staff is amazing. The food is unfreaking believable. It really is. And come down, Merrick Road, Seaford, visit Greg, tell him we sent you, and you won't be disappointed. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.